It was virtually impossible for her to sneak away, even for a few hours. And ever since she had begun to show signs of the baby she was now carrying, her best friend, the variant girl named Scar, started keeping track of her comings and goings with an especially keen eye. Scar had always prided herself on making sure her friends stayed out of trouble. That was one of the many ways she showed her love. And Esther was also aware that variants, born with male and female parts, had no experience of childbirth and thought of it as a complete mystery. Scar clearly viewed Esther's pregnancy with wonderment, even awe, and now treated her friend like a precious and fragile thing in need of special care. Her concern made Esther grit her teeth with exasperation. She had grown up in almost total freedom, playing in and exploring the scorched and abandoned streets and buildings of her hometown of Prynne. To now live such a restricted life and under constant supervision felt like a prison sentence with no end in sight. The girl felt restless, cooped up, and constantly on edge, being indoors day after day with the same people, unable to hunt, ride a bicycle, or even run. All she needed, Esther knew, was just to be outside on her own for a single hour. Her partner, Aris, had been sound asleep, as was the child, little Kai. Only Aris's dog, Pilot, awoke as she silently laced up her sneakers in the darkness. He lifted his wolf-like head in greeting and thumped his tail once on the carpeted floor before he curled up again and drifted back to sleep. Then Esther had made it down the 10 flights to the lobby. She had previously located a side door that was fastened with a heavy chain. Although her belly was huge, she found she could still open it enough to squeeze through and into the early morning air. With luck, Esther figured she would be back before anyone even realized she was gone. Esther ran the way Scar had taught her years before, lightly and on the balls of her sneakered feet, slipping from one hiding place to the next. True, she was much heavier than she had been before. Running felt clumsy, and she had trouble seeing the ground, which made her footing precarious. Her jeans, belted low, were too baggy on her bony hips and threatened to trip her with every step. Yet it was a pure pleasure to move fast again, to feel her arms and legs working together in an easy, effortless way as the wind blew against her skin, ruffling through her dark hair. As she ran, Esther scanned the horizon for any signs of outsider activity, her eyes attuned to the silence of the city around her. She didn't stop until she reached the outskirts of town, near one of the long bridges over the broad, dry expanse that had once been a river. By now, the morning sky had grown brighter, and as she pushed back the hood of her sweatshirt to wipe the sweat from her forehead, she realized she was hungry. Down the street was what looked like an abandoned supermarket. With effort, she could sound out its name. Pathmark. Gleaning was the way Esther and everyone else had fed themselves until recently. It meant breaking into old stores and homes and searching for packaged foods that were still edible. Sugar and salt, dried beans, honey, and coffee, as well as plastic bottles of water and soda. Special gleaning teams continued to go out once a week, accompanied by armed guards to augment what they were able to grow. Still, Esther hoped they had somehow missed this place. She was about to approach when she noticed the shattered front door. The store had most likely been picked clean years ago. But just as she was about to turn away, she heard something else. A musical cooing in the distance started, then stopped. It was answered by another. Silhouetted against the sky were several small shapes perched on an overhead wire strung between tall metal poles. One of them took off and flittered to the branches of a nearby tree. Esther watched the birds for a moment. She had been so intent on sneaking out that morning, she hadn't thought to bring a weapon. Now she gazed about on the ground, looking for a rock, or wondering if she could launch it with enough force and accuracy to hit one of the creatures. As if they could read her thoughts, the shapes broke apart,